You've got to understand something deep today. Before you even realize the calling on your life, before you fully grasp the assignment God has placed on you, the enemy already senses it. Demons don't wait for the announcement. They react to the aroma. They can smell destiny. They can sense movement. They know when something is about to shift, and they tremble. The moment God marks your life for purpose, warfare begins. Long before you receive the title, the position, or the breakthrough, the attack doesn't wait for your confirmation letter or your elevation ceremony. It starts in the shadows, because hell doesn't fight what isn't a threat. The enemy doesn't need your permission to start resisting you. He just needs to catch wind of what's been deposited inside you. And when heaven releases a word over your life, it echoes in the spiritual realm, and demons hear it loud and clear. They hear your potential before you see your progress. They detect your rising before you detect your rhythm. And so the battle breaks out before the blessing shows up. That's why some of your hardest seasons didn't make sense. You hadn't stepped into anything yet. You were still figuring it out, still waiting, still seeking clarity. And yet the warfare was real, intense, and unrelenting. You were attacked before you were affirmed. Why? Because the enemy saw the oil before you did. He sensed the hand of God writing your future, and he tried to scribble over it before you could read it for yourself. That's why you were targeted in childhood. That's why you faced betrayal before you ever stepped onto your platform. That's why your life got hard the moment you got serious. The enemy's strategy is to crush you before you carry. He aims to disqualify you before you discover who you are. He sends confusion to crowd your mind and whispers lies to question your value, all to keep you from stepping into the thing that's already been sealed in heaven. See, promotion in the kingdom isn't about earthly recognition. It's about divine authorization. You're promoted in the spirit before you ever get promoted in the natural. And that spiritual shift causes a ripple that Satan picks up instantly. He doesn't wait for your name to be called. He fights you because of the name you already carry. You bear the seal of the one who called you out of darkness, and that seal speaks louder than your surroundings. So, while you're walking through doubt, the enemy is launching distractions. While you're praying for signs, the enemy is throwing storms. Because he knows that if he can hit you early, he can possibly stop you eternally. He wants to shake your confidence before you ever gain clarity. Sometimes the greatest indicator that you're close to breakthrough isn't peace. It's pressure. It's the fire that shows up when you finally surrender. It's the resistance that increases the moment you choose obedience. It's the silence of God paired with the noise of the enemy. That's when you know something has shifted in the spirit. You're no longer being ignored, you're being noticed. And being noticed by darkness means you're walking toward the light. The attacks that show up before promotion are strategic. They aim for your identity. Because if Satan can confuse who you are, he can delay where you're going. If he can keep you thinking small, broken, unworthy, or insignificant, he can make you sit in places God never told you to settle in. He can convince you that the fire is a sign of rejection rather than refinement. But the fire is only proof that heaven has you in the process. You were never meant to go into your calling without conflict. Conflict is part of the confirmation. It's not a curse, it's a clue. It's the signal that the enemy has caught wind of something you haven't fully embraced yet. And instead of letting that fear paralyze, you let it remind you. If the enemy sees it, you better start believing it. There's something inside you that's been seen in the spirit realm. And it's time to walk like it. Early warfare is often the clearest sign of future weight. People may not understand why you're being attacked. They may say you're overthinking, being dramatic, or exaggerating. But they don't hear what's being stirred in the spiritual. They don't know what God whispered over you in private. They don't sense the urgency of your assignment. So, while they relax, you wrestle. And while they sleep, you stand. The most dangerous threat to darkness is someone who hasn't even stepped into their full calling, but already knows they're called. Someone who hasn't received the crown, but still carries the cross. Someone who's in process, but prays like they've already arrived. That's what the enemy hates. Not where you are, but what you're on the edge of becoming. So if the fight came early, it's because the calling came first. Spiritual warfare isn't a random disturbance in your life. It's a targeted reaction to your potential. The enemy doesn't launch an attack based on your present situation. He attacks based on what he sees forming in the spirit. You might not feel like much right now. You might still be fighting doubt, insecurity, and weakness. But the enemy sees something different. He sees the future version of you. He sees the healed you, the delivered you, the walking in purpose you. And that version is dangerous. That version breaks chains, shifts atmospheres, speaks with authority, and carries divine power. So warfare is not proof you're failing. It's proof you're becoming. You've got to stop measuring your spiritual attacks by your current strength. The enemy isn't responding to your today. He's reacting to your tomorrow. He's not scared of who you are in this moment. He's terrified of who you're about to become. That's why the fire started when it did. That's why the enemy used people close to you to wound you. That's why confusion hit when you were just beginning to find clarity. He's not just trying to frustrate you. He's trying to abort the potential God planted in you. Satan fights what he fears, not what he has already defeated. So if you're in a fight, it means you're feared. It means the enemy has identified something in you that hasn't even been fully revealed yet. Sometimes spiritual warfare comes to disrupt you before you even recognize what's growing inside you. You haven't even seen your full reflection in God's mirror, but the enemy already has, and he's threatened. The attacks aren't about your history. They're about your destiny. That's why some attacks feel premature. That's why things came against you when you were still developing, still learning, still finding your way. Because the goal of spiritual warfare is to cause you to forfeit your future by damaging your faith in the present. It's to discourage you before you understand what you've been designed to carry. It's to make you doubt God before you discover what He's deposited in you. Because once you truly walk in your calling, it's too late for hell to stop you. When the enemy senses your potential, he doesn't wait until you arrive. He tries to block the path. He sends distractions to detour you, delays to frustrate you, and people to disappoint you. Not because he's confused about who you are, but because he's clear on who you will be. Your potential is prophetic. It speaks to what you haven't even said yes to yet. It declares war against spiritual forces before you even know you're enlisted. This is why you must discern the difference between punishment and preparation. Not every battle is a sign you've something wrong. Some battles are signs that you're being prepared for something right. The pressure, the opposition, the testing, it's heaven's way of strengthening what the enemy is trying to weaken, because God won't allow you to step into greatness with a fragile faith. So he allows the warfare to reveal what still needs to be fortified. Don't misinterpret your fight as failure. Your spiritual warfare is simply heaven's announcement that you've been chosen for more, that you've been assigned something that threatens the kingdom of darkness. You may not have stepped into your full identity yet, but the enemy sees it approaching. And because he knows he can't cancel it, he hopes you'll walk away from it. That's why you can't retreat. You can't back down. You can't give the enemy the satisfaction of watching you abandon the very thing that makes you powerful. Your spiritual potential carries weight, and weight attracts warfare. You may not feel qualified for what's ahead, but the spiritual realm already sees you as a contender. You are not just a believer. You are a builder. You are not just a follower. You are a force. So when all of hell starts pressing against you, it's because heaven has placed something priceless inside of you. And the devil only breaks into houses that carry treasure. The intensity of your warfare is an indicator of the importance of your assignment. The more pressure you face, the more precious your purpose. If you weren't going to do damage to the kingdom of darkness, you wouldn't even be on their radar. But because God has placed something in you that will impact generations, shift environments, and release others from bondage, you're a target. But even in the middle of the battle, remember, your potential didn't come from people, and it can't be taken by people. It was authored by God. And if God started it, he'll finish it. The presence of a storm doesn't mean God has abandoned you. It often means he's preparing you. The storm is not always the enemy's weapon. Sometimes it's God's classroom. It's the space where he develops what you prayed for, but didn't know you'd have to fight for. A storm shows up when something is shifting in your atmosphere. It doesn't show up to destroy you. It shows up to reveal you, because nothing exposes the depth of your faith like the winds of adversity. The waves test what words alone cannot confirm. When Jesus told the disciples to get into the boat and go to the other side, he already knew a storm would meet them in the middle. He didn't say, if a storm comes, he said, go. That means the storm was on the path of obedience. They didn't encounter chaos because they were rebellious. They encountered it because they were righteous. Sometimes, the storm isn't a sign you're off track. It's the very proof that you're in the will of God. The enemy doesn't need to stir the waters of people going nowhere. He creates storms for those who are carrying something that will shift everything. There's something greater waiting on the other side of your storm. The enemy sends winds not because of your current location, but because of your future destination. The storm doesn't rise until you move. It doesn't manifest while you're stagnant. It shows up when you start progressing. The wind is a signal that the atmosphere senses change, that you're disturbing something that's been too comfortable, that your obedience has unlocked a chain reaction in the unseen realm, and that shaking you feel. It's because heaven is breaking something open. Jesus wasn't surprised by the storm. He slept through it. Because rest in the middle of chaos is the posture of someone who knows the outcome has already been secured. That storm wasn't about destruction. It was about revelation. It revealed who really had faith. It revealed who truly trusted the word over the wind. And in your life, the storm isn't just testing your strength. It's exposing your source. Are you built on the applause of people or the promises of God? Are you steady because of your environment or because of your anchor? The storm comes to strip you of every false security. It takes away the illusions of control and leaves you with raw dependency on the one who never fails. When you can't steer and you can't see and you can't save yourself, that's when God shows up in ways that redefine your understanding of who He is. Some of the greatest revelations of God's power don't happen in calm. They happen in chaos. The storm doesn't come to destroy your foundation. It comes to reveal it. The storm is also a separator. It divides those who are just curious from those who are truly committed. Not everyone who starts the journey is built to survive the storm. Some relationships won't make it through the wind. Some habits won't survive the waves. Some patterns of thinking will drown in the pressure. And that's not a loss, it's a necessary shift. Because what's waiting on the other side of this storm requires a lighter load and a stronger focus. In the spiritual realm, storms are often indicators that a gate is opening, that territory is shifting, that something you've prayed for is within reach. But before you inherit it, you must endure the process that purifies you, because God will not promote a version of you that isn't prepared. The storm isn't proof that the promise is denied. It's proof that the promise is defended. You're being refined for what's ahead. Sometimes you don't see how close you are until the storm starts breaking everything that doesn't belong in the next season. It's in the wreckage that you begin to realize what was really essential. You start to cling to the word more tightly. You start to listen with desperation instead of distraction. And in the process, you stop being a passive participant in your own faith. You become a warrior, a storm-forged believer, one who knows God, not just in theory, but in trial. The storm is loud, but it's not final. It may shake the boat, but it won't sink the plan. Because when God speaks, go, it means He's already seen the other side. He's already gone ahead of you. And no matter how intense the winds become, if He said there's more, then the storm is simply the sign that you're getting closer to it. The wind may be fierce, the waves may rise, but what's coming is greater than what you're going through. Destiny doesn't wait for you to announce it. It makes noise in the unseen realm long before you become aware of it in the natural. The moment God speaks a word over your life, it begins to move things in the spirit. You may still be in hiding, still developing, still questioning if you're even worthy. But the assignment has already started shaking the ground beneath your feet. Destiny doesn't arrive quietly. It walks ahead of you, leaving a spiritual footprint that alerts both angels and adversaries that something is coming. You haven't stepped into the fullness yet, but your shadow is already making impact. That's why you've felt resistance in rooms. You never even tried to dominate. That's why people shift when you enter spaces you don't even speak in. Because even before you speak, your spirit speaks. Your atmosphere carries weight. There's a fingerprint of heaven on your life. And those who walk in the spirit, good or evil, can feel it. You're not ordinary, and you never have been. You were marked before you were known. And the trail you leave behind isn't made of noise, it's made of presence. A divine residue that says, God is doing something here. Every step you take in obedience sends a signal. It tells the kingdom of darkness that purpose is progressing, that God's design is unfolding, that what the enemy tried to block is still moving. And the enemy doesn't just watch where you walk. He senses where you're headed. That's why some of the warfare you're facing doesn't match your current platform. Because it's not about where you are, it's about where you're going. You're not being fought over your now. You're being fought over your next. There are moments when you feel the tension before you even make the decision. That's destiny pressing through. When you haven't even announced the dream yet, but the opposition is already forming. When the very thought of elevation invites heaviness into your life. That's not coincidence. It's spiritual response. It's the ripple effect of your assignment beginning to rise from within you. The friction you're feeling is often confirmation that something invisible is becoming undeniable. Destiny leaves behind signals that disturb the atmosphere. You can be in a room and not say a word, but your spirit announces your arrival. You carry authority that your mouth hasn't even caught up to yet. And when you move forward in purpose, even the ground reacts. People may not be able to name it, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the shift when you pray. They'll feel the change when you speak. They'll sense the calling even if they don't comprehend it. That's why you've been misunderstood. That's why some relationships couldn't hold up under the weight of who you're becoming. Because destiny doesn't just demand movement. It creates pressure. And not everyone can handle the pressure of what walks with you. Some people are uncomfortable around you not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And it's not pride, it's presence. It's the spiritual footprint of a life that's been touched by God. You don't have to prove your calling to anybody. Your life will speak for itself. The anointing you carry isn't something you have to advertise. It announces itself through alignment. When you're walking in purpose, heaven backs you and hell notices. You can't hide it. Even in your silent seasons, even when you feel broken, the oil on your life still flows. And those who are sensitive in the spirit can trace the path you're on because your journey is leaving echoes. Destiny isn't just what you step into. It's what walks with you. It's not only in your destination, it's in your direction. And the further you go, the more the enemy tries to intercept. But every step forward is proof that God's hand hasn't left you. Every mile gained in faith leaves a trail of testimony behind you. You may not have arrived, but you've shifted something. You've moved the atmosphere. You've awakened opposition because you carry answers. There's a sound you make when you're walking in obedience. It's not audible to everyone, but it's unmistakable to the spirit realm. That's why hell sends distractions. That's why confusion tries to cloud your vision. Because you're not just walking for yourself. You're walking for something greater. You're the beginning of freedom for your family. You're the first to carry this kind of weight. And when destiny walks, the enemy watches and trembles. Even in your delay, even in your doubt, even in your detour, the spiritual footprint remains. And you're still marked. You're still moving. And you're still leaving traces of something eternal. What's on you is too significant to be silenced. It cannot be hidden by fear, failure, or fatigue, because the one who authored your destiny also gave it spiritual traction. And whether you feel it or not, you're leaving evidence that God is with you every single step. The enemy wants you in panic mode because panic clouds discernment. Panic paralyzes obedience. Panic makes you forget the promises of God and focus only on the problems at hand. But panic is not your portion. Preparation is. When God begins to stir something in your spirit, when warfare intensifies, when opposition seems to rise out of nowhere, it's not a signal to fall apart. It's a sign to get in position. Heaven doesn't train people in peace, it trains them in pressure. And in the pressure, God isn't asking you to panic. He's calling you to prepare. Preparation is spiritual warfare in disguise. The enemy hopes you'll be too distracted by fear to fast, too overwhelmed to worship, too anxious to listen. But when you prepare, you send a message to hell. I know what's coming is greater than what I'm going through. Preparation isn't just about strategy. It's about expectation. It's about aligning your spirit with what God already said, even when your environment doesn't look like it yet. When you prepare, you're moving in faith. You're showing God that your belief runs deeper than your emotions. The pattern of God throughout Scripture has never been to promote panic. He prepares people in advance. He told Noah to build before the rain came. He told the Israelites to pack before Pharaoh released them. He told the virgins to bring oil before the bridegroom arrived. Because God doesn't want you scrambling, He wants you steady. And steadiness comes from being spiritually equipped before the moment hits. If you wait until the storm arrives to build an altar, you've waited too long. The altar must already be in place. When warfare comes, you don't go backward, you go deeper. You dig deeper into the Word. You press deeper into prayer. You walk with purpose, not paranoia, because the God who called you already made provision for everything you would face. He didn't call you to panic. He called you to partner with Him in faith. Faith doesn't ignore the storm. It prepares in the middle of it. It braces, not because of fear, but because of foresight. The enemy wants you exhausted from reacting, so you never enter the season of building. He wants you to stay busy fighting small fires, so you miss the bigger purpose. But when you stop panicking and start preparing, your posture shifts. You stop praying just for survival and start praying for strategy. You stop asking God to end the storm and start asking Him to equip you in it. Because the real battle is not always what's coming against you. It's what's building within you. When you prepare, you remind your soul who your source is. You reestablish the altar. You re-anchor yourself in truth. You return to the things that don't shake when everything else does. Because God doesn't speak most clearly in chaos. He speaks most clearly to those who have trained their ears in the quiet. If you only listen when life gets loud, you'll miss what He whispered when things were still. Preparation creates a listening life. You weren't built to fall apart every time resistance shows up. You were built to rise, to refocus, to regroup, and to prepare. Every trial is an opportunity to train. Every delay is a moment to dig. Every battle is a call to sharpen your sword. This is the time to fortify your spirit, to memorize the Word, to speak what God says over your situation, not what fear says. Because when the time comes to stand, you won't have to panic. You'll already be postured. Preparation is proof that you believe the promise. It's not just mental, it's movement. You change the way you walk. You shift the way you speak. You stop entertaining distractions. You build the ark even if the skies are still clear. You fill your lamp even if it's still daylight, because you're not waiting for confirmation to obey. You're obeying because you've already been confirmed by the Spirit. You don't prepare based on feelings, you prepare based on faith. People who prepare always look strange to those who are spiritually asleep. They may mock you for fasting, for sacrificing, for staying consecrated. But preparation often looks foolish until the flood comes. It looks unnecessary until the moment of need arises. And when it does, those who laughed will be left watching. Because while others were panicking, you were planting. You were planting. While others were worried, you were worshiping. And what was once private preparation becomes public manifestation. This is not the season to be caught off guard. You've come too far to be thrown off course by spiritual distraction. The weapons have already been formed, but you've been given an armor. The trial may be approaching, but your training has been ongoing. The moment may be big, but the God in you is bigger. So don't panic, prepare. Because what's coming requires a version of you that's ready to carry the weight of glory without collapsing under it. Don't wait for the world to recognize your worth. Hell already has. They sensed it when you got up from that depression. They sensed it when you didn't quit. They sensed it when you still praised through the pain. So stand tall. Walk with power. Live with intention. Because even before you saw it, even before you felt it, even before you knew it, they sensed what was coming. And now it's time you did too.